One of the more frequent questions that I get asked is, how do you practice with your stone pointed arrows? And the fast and easy answer to that is you don't. So hang with me and we're gonna work through it pretty darn quick so you never have to worry about practicing with these again. When your arrows are tested and shooting really well, you can then put the stone points on and there's no reason to shoot them again until you're in the hunting situation. Boy, I got that one. Now there's two main ways to go about this: the more modern solution and then what did early people do. So hang with me and we're going to cover both of those. The first solution is that you practice with a 70 grain field point. So I know there's going to be some folks that are really concerned that, well, what if my stone point weighs 50 grains or maybe it weighs 80 grains? It's not going to fly the same if you shoot a 70 grain field point, right? Nope, absolutely not true at all. In fact, when we get into the next section, I'll explain why that doesn't actually matter at all. But the weight difference between, say, 70 grains versus 80 grains on a stone point, or even 50 grains, or even 30 grains, maybe even 100 grains, is going to be negligible, and you should probably never notice any difference in flight characteristics. And the next reason is going to explain that a little bit better. So basically, taper down, glue on a 70 grain field point is what I usually tell my customers and followers, and you can practice with this pretty much all you want. Then when the arrow's flying good, take it off, put your stone point on, and you're ready to hunt. All right, so if the Native Americans didn't have glue-on field points to practice with, how did they practice with their stone points? And again, the answer is fun, because they didn't. This is what they shot, just a simple blunt-ended or sharpened arrow with no point on it whatsoever. And if you've watched my other videos, you will probably recognize this arrow because I've shot a lot of rabbits with it. Ooh, stone cold, that one. Ooh, stone cold, that one. That one's, they don't get any deader than that. At this point with rabbits, I either aim for the head or the shoulder. You either get them or you don't. And it is simply a piece of river cane that is just has the end plugged, and there's no point on this whatsoever. And I've killed a lot of rabbits with this blunt-ended arrow. Arrows do not need a point or weight in the front to fly well. And we're going to explain that a little bit more here in just a second. But if your arrow flies really well without a point, then it's nothing to just go ahead and haft your stone point right onto the end of this arrow and you're ready to go. So like we said about the adding a 70 grain field point, I can take this arrow that has no point on it whatsoever and I can put anything from a 30 grain up to an 80 grain point on the end of this, and realistically I'm not worried about it changing the way the arrow flies at all. So really the long story short is I personally don't even practice with metal points unless it's a 70 grain field point. Typically I'm going to test all of my arrows to fly without points at all, practice with blunt ends, then I'm going to have to stone point on, and then I'm ready to go hunt. Now, early on, I didn't necessarily trust that, so I did want to take a practice shot or two with stone points, and you may as well, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's when you're going to want to use a target like one of these cheap polystyrene targets or styrofoam targets, because they're very soft and they're not going to damage your stone points. And all of that is talked about in great detail in my book, The Secrets and Science of Primitive Archery. And as far as making the bow more forgiving, that'll be expounded upon even more in my new book, The Secrets and Science of Building Bows and Arrows, which will be out here actually pretty soon, probably around April of 2024. So now the secret to making your bow a lot more forgiving is having the string track down the side of the bow that the arrow is going to be on. So a lot of times when people build their bows, they want the string to track just perfectly right down the center of the handle when they look down it, and actually that makes the bow a little tougher and more finicky with the arrows that it wants to shoot. So typically when you build a bow, the string naturally wants to favor one side or the other. And so as we talk about in the books, if you choose the side of the bow that the string already wants to favor and use that as the side that your arrow is shot from, it means you don't have to have nearly as finicky of an arrow spine. In fact, I don't even spine my own arrows anymore. Most of mine are so heavy spined because I don't even need to spine them. I can have a 125 pound spine arrow and shoot it off this bow, and I'll have no fish tailing and no end kick in my arrow because I've built the bow to accommodate shooting a wide range of arrow shafts. And that's exactly how this hurdle was overcome in prehistoric times. Sometimes the simplest answer is actually the best answer. Spine testing and weighing all of your arrows is actually the difficult answer. If you learn to build a bow that's very forgiving, you can shoot just about any arrow from it as long as it's not severely underspined. All right, so here we have our arrow with a 70 grain field point, and we're ready to test it. Now I already know it. Somebody's going to say that's not a proper backstop and you're going to shoot through that fence. I own both sides of that fence, so don't worry about that. Now here is an arrow that has no point on it whatsoever, and like I said, you may be familiar with this because you've seen me shoot a lot of rabbits with this same exact arrow that has absolutely no weight on the front end. And so that just goes to prove that you do not have to have that perfectly matched grained point on the end of your arrow. You can practice without any points at all, or you can practice with a 70 grain field point, and you're going to get very, very comparable flight when you add your stone points. So when you're ready to add the stone points, add them. No need to shoot them again until you're ready to shoot at that deer or hog or bear or elk or whatever it is that you want to shoot at. So thanks for following along. I'm Ryan Gill with Hunt Primitive. Again, think about checking out the book, The Secrets and Science of Primitive Archery, and the new one that we're coming out with here very shortly, which is The Secrets and Science of Building Bows and Arrows.